How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Gimel, Daf 3 of Masechta Sotah, friends. Daf 3, I guess we kind of continue, I don't know, I guess we kind of continue on the discussion of, I guess we talk about the kinui, and we discussed yesterday, is kinui b'di'ever l'chatchila, and now we're going to talk about today machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva about is it a rishus or chova, is it obligatory or is it optional? Okay, we're going to have to see, and then some other. It's hard to kind of wrap around your head. There's a bunch of stuff on this stuff. Okay, Tanya Reb Meir Omer. So says the Gemara 4 lines into the daf. Says the Gemara, Tanya Reb Meir Omer. Reb Meir would say, Adam over aver baseiser. So fun. We haven't had Gemaras like this in so long. I don't know. It's gewaldig. So Adam over aver baseiser. Hakadosh Baruch Hu machos olav b'gala. That if a fellow does an avera in secret, so the Eibishter announces it in the public. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, v'over olav ruach kinav, and that the pasuk says v'over olav ruach kinav, that they will pass upon him a spirit of kinav. Ve'ein avera el lashon achraza. And Avera is Lashon Achraza, to announce Shneimar v'yitzav Moshe v'yaviru kol b'machne. That Moshe Rabbeinu commanded, and they passed a voice in the machne, they made an announcement. So we see that, Sotah is something that, of course, is done in private between the woman and the so-and-so, and between the wife and this other fellow. And it says, Ve'over alav ruach kina, that there's an announcement. So we see that even things that happen in quiet and privacy, if it's an avera, it will be announced publicly. Rish Lakish, Omer says, Rish Lakish, in Adam over avera ela imkein nichnas bo ruach shtos. Says, it's pretty famous. Says Rish Lakish that a fellow only sins if there's some kind of spirit of folly, of shtus, of nonsense that enters into the fellow. That if it weren't for this spirit of nonsense, he wouldn't sin. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, ish ki siste ishto, sishte ksiv. That when the pasuk says by Sotah ki siste ishto, it's like shote, it's like shtus. That a person only sins if there's some kind of a spirit of silliness that enters into them and causes them to sin. Tana de Rabbi Yishmael, son of Besmedrash Rabbi Yishmael, pnei ha'emina Torah eid echad besotah. How come one witness is believed by the tumah of a sotah? It's because there is already sort of, where there's smoke, there's fire, because there's already indications, shari kinela, v'nistera, that, he had already warned her, and then she secluded herself with this fellow after the warning. Ve'ed echad me'ida. Now, in addition to that, you have one witness testifying, she tmeya. So, all of these things are kind of indicating similar conclusions, and therefore, for that reason, we can rely upon one witness to testify that she is Tamei, that she had Bia. Again, we can't, this isn't that, that we can, kill her as a capital offense, but, and him as well, but that she can no longer remain with her husband and she doesn't get a ksuba. Okay. And it says Rav Papa to Abaye, V'aki ksiva kinoi basur stira v'tuma hu d'chsiva. We just said that he had that he had already warned her, and then she secluded herself with this fellow, and then she had bia. But Rav Papa points out to Abaye, if you look at the psukim chronologically, it says kinoi, right? Kinoi, the warning is actually later in the next pasuk after the stira and the tuma. So Omar Lei, so says Abai to Papa ve'ovar uchvar ovar. That when it says ve'ovar olav ruach kina, it means ve'ovar in the past, that he had already warned her prior to the stira and the tuma. Elamiata ve'ovar lochem kol chalo tochinami. So one second, in fact, the Gemara that it says by Ruvain Gad and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, that when they had to go fight in the front lines. First, when the Yidden went to Eretz Yisrael, so it says ve'over lachem. So you're going to say there also that it means in the past. when the pasuk says, and then the Eretz Yisrael will be captured for the Eibishter, and then afterwards you can go back. Clearly they haven't yet fought. It's saying that you will fight, you will capture the land, and then you can go back home. So when it says v'avar there, it clearly means in the future. There's a whole sunflower situation going on outside. Se'elo hacha isa kadaitech kidichsive v'avar basar tuma v'stira kinoi lamali. But the Gemara says, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense here. If you're going to say that v'avar means in the future he will warn her, why the heck would he warn her after she already had stira and tuma? Clearly, in this context, v'avar means that he first warns her, and then there's kinui and stira. So v'avar in this context has to mean that he had already warned her prior to the kinui and the stira. 1 second, let me just have to get what's it called? Accustomed. I have to take a break for a second just to acknowledge the fact that there's sunflower people outside being very sunflowery, and then let me get my focus back. Okay, I just got up and had a look. Let me tell you, it's a serious sunflower situation going on there. Like, I didn't look too intently, but I'd say 85% chance that they're eating sunflower seeds. That's a real sunflower situation. Alright, let's go weiter. So Tanit Rabbi Shmuel, we learned by the Bismillah of Rabbi Shmuel, Ein Adam Mekana L'Ishta Elam Ke Nichmasa Bo Ruach. Oh, so a fellow only, let's say warns. Yeah, let's assume it means warn. I think we have to basically go with, especially for the upcoming discussion that we're going to have now about, is warning a reshus or a chova. I mean, that kind of assumes that it's not forbidden to warn, to do this. So, the kinoi. So I'm going to go with kinoi being warning. So a fellow only warns his wife if he has some kind of spirit. Shenema, as the Apostle says, v'avar olav ruach kina. He gets the spirit of warning, a warning spirit. The kini asishta, and he warns his wife. My ruach. So Rabbanon Amri Ruach Tumos. So the rabbis say it means that he has this ruach of the spirit of, he's not doing it for the right reasons. He's not doing it because he's looking for purity in his marriage. He's doing it, I don't know, he's shtickle nunnik, I guess. Rav Ashi Omar Ruach Tayr. Rav Ashi says, no, it's a pure spirit that, he wants that things should be misudar in his marriage. And it makes more sense, like Rav Ashi, who says it's a spirit of purity. Titania, as we learned in the verse of Vikinias Ishto, Rishus, Tiv Rabbi Shmuel, that Rabbi Shmuel says that when it says that the husband warns his wife, it's his option. He's not required to sort of warn his wife and embark on the whole Sotah thing, but he can. Rabbi Kiva Omer says Rabbi Kiva Chova, no, he must. That if he suspects that his wife is having an affair with somebody, he must warn her and kind of kick off this whole Sotah snowball. Yomer Bishlomo Ruach Tayre Shapers. Now it makes sense if you say it's a spirit of purity, well then that makes sense, okay? He has the right intentions, and the question is, does he have to warn his wife, or must he, or can he warn his wife? Ruach Tuma. But if you say it's not coming from a good place, from a pure place, it's coming from some other place why he's warning his wife about not being with somebody else, well then, what Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva are arguing about, does he have to warn his wife in an inappropriate way, or is he allowed to warn his wife in an inappropriate way? Like, it's not really, you wouldn't really have a machlokas about, how you should relate to doing something you're not supposed to do, right? I mean, how could it be that Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva are having a machlokas about, does he have to be a nudnik or can he be a nudnik? That's not really the machlokas that they would have. Therefore, it makes more sense to say that the warning must come from a pure place, a pure intention. And the question is, this pure intention, is it optional or is it obligatory? Okay. Now we're going to get into three machloks in between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva that are similar to, one of them is the one that we just mentioned, where over here by Sotah we said, Rabbi Shmuel says that he can warn his wife, whereas Rabbi Akiva says the husband must warn his wife. We're going to see two other examples where Rabbi Shmuel says Rishos and Rabbi Akiva says Chova. Fine. Grufa v'kines ishto rishus divrei Rabbi Shmuel. So we just said that the husband can warn his wife. That's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva omer chova. Rabbi Kiva says he must warn his wife. Lo yitama rishus divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva omer chova. That when it says by a kohen, that a kohen, if a relative dies, right? Of course, a kohen in general is not allowed to become Tamei Meis, but if a relative dies, then he can become Tamei Meis. And the question is, can he become Tamei Meis or must he become Tamei Meis for a relative? Rabbi Shmuel says he can. Rabbi Akiva says he must. The Olam Boim Ta'avodu, and it says by Avodim Knainim that you're not allowed to free them. You must work. You must keep them as Avodim generationally, right, forever. You can't free them. So Rabbi Yishmael says that that's an option, and Rabbi Akiva says it's a must, right? Rishus div Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva omer chova. Rabbi Yishmael says it's a rishus, Rabbi Akiva says it's a chova. Fine. Amar Rav Papa l'Abaye, Rav Papa says to Abaye ve'amrilo Rav Mishashir l'Rave. Some says Rav Mishashir l'Rave leimor Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Akiva b'chol tera kula hachi plige. Is it possible to say that Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva argue like this b'chol Torah kula everywhere in the Torah, the Mar Amar Rishus, Mar Amar Chova, that basically every place where we have a mitzvah's essay, Rabbi Yishmael would say it's optional, and Rabbi Akiva says it's obligatory. So what? Rabbi Yishmael basically just says that every single mitzvah's essay is optional. So Amarle Hacha Bikroi Plige. So the response, whether it's from Rava or Abaye, depending on which version, no, it's these specific cases. But in general, of course, you'd have to do mitzvahs asay. But in these three specific cases, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva about is it a rishus or a chova. So Demar Omar, where am I? Did I skip? So Demar Omar rishus, Mar Omar chova. Amar hachi b'kroi kaplige. Vikine es ishto rishus. So when it comes to Sotah, so it says that he warns his wife, and that is optional. That's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Rabbi Akiva omer chova. Rabbi Akiva says he must warn his wife if he suspects her of adultery. So my time to Rabbi Shmuel. How come Rabbi Shmuel says it's optional? Because he holds like the following Tana, the Tanya that we learn in the Brayso. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov klapi she omra teire leisisnes achicha bilvavecha. Well, look, we know that the Torah says that you may not hate your brother in your heart. So Yachol kigon zo. So is it possible that the husband might say, look, I'm not allowed to warn my wife because I can't hate her. I can't do anything hurtful. I can't suspect her. I guess, how can I go and warn her and kick off this whole thing of Sotah? So you might think that he's not allowed to. Tam lomer ve'over olav ruach kino v'kine es ishto. Therefore, we have the pasuk to say, no, in this case you're allowed to. You don't have to, but you're allowed to. It's not a violation of lo sisnas achicha b'vavecha. Rabbi Akiva, whereas Rabbi Akiva says, kinoi achrina ksiv. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says, yeah, but it says, right, v'kine es ishto, twice. Where does it say twice? V'avar olav ruach kina v'kine es ishto v'nitma. V'avar olav ruach kina v'kine es ishto v'lo nitma. So it says kinoi twice, and therefore, one is to teach that he's allowed to. The other one is to teach that he actually must, according to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel, whereas Rabbi Shmuel responds, "Adi debai lemichtav v'hinitma." Well, look, that second kinoi, don't read into it too much, says Rabbi Shmuel, because because we had initially said, right, v'kine v'ishto v'hinitma, and then we also have to say v'hilo nitma, right? So since we had the b'ayil mitzvah v'hinitma v'hilo nitma, ksiv nami v'kine es ishto, right? That because we had to say v'hinitma and v'hilo nitma, so we also said in both places also v'kine es ishto, but really it's not. Don't read into it too much. The Tana d'Rabbi Shmuel, it's like the Tana d'Rabbi Shmuel, the Tana d'Rabbi Shmuel, called parsha shnemer v'nishnes. That whenever you have a parsha that had to be repeated, lo nishnes ela b'shvil davar shenis chadish. But the reason why it was repeated was for whatever chiddush there is in it. But don't read too much into all the other stuff. So here, we had to repeat it for the fact that in one case it says hi nitma, in the other case it says hi lo nitma. That was really the main thing that had to be taught. All the rest of the context that was also copied over, such as v'kine es ishto, don't read into it too much. Says Rabbi Shmuel, don't read into it that it's a chova leave it alone. It's just a rishus. Fine. Now, moving on. Lo yitama, that when the pasuk says by a kohen that even though he's not allowed in general to become tamei tumas hameis, he does become tamei to his relatives. So when it says lo yitama, that he can become tamei, it's written in the context of his sister, but he can become tamei to his relatives. Rishus to Rabbi Shmuel. So Rabbi Shmuel says that he's allowed to become tamei to his relatives. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chova, he must become tamei to his relatives. My time with Rabbi Shmuel, how come Rabbi Shmuel says he's allowed? Well, because since the pasuk says speak to the kehanim and say that they're not allowed to become tamei tumas hameis, so it's trichel michtav lo yitam. So therefore I had to, say that yes, but you're allowed to become tamei to your relatives, because otherwise I wouldn't know that, because I know that the kehanim are not allowed to become tamei to anybody. And therefore I would assume that it includes relatives, unless the pasuk told us, lo yitama, that no, you are allowed to become tamei to your relatives, if you're a kohen. Rabbi Kiva, mikim l'sheiro nafka. Lo. Kim l'sheiro nafka. Whereas Rabbi Kiva says, no, that I know from kim l'sheiro, right? It says, Emor el kan b'nei har v'mat alem nefesh l'tam v'amav, kim l'sheiro hakar ve'elav. The pasuk already says, but he is allowed to become tamei to his relatives. So from there we know that that a kohen can become tamei to the relatives. Lo yitama lomali lechova. And therefore Rabbi Akiva says that why do I need lo yitama? It's to teach that not only are you allowed to become tamei to your relatives if you're a kohen, but you must. For Rabbi Shmuel, no. Rabbi Shmuel says no. Lo yitama doesn't teach that you must be tamei to your relatives. Lo mitama ve'mitama levoreh. It means that he can become tamei to, so lo yitama to his sister, he could become tamei, but to her, not to her limb. If her arm falls off, right, the arm would have tumas hameis. He can't become tamei to his sister's arm. Become tamei to his sister, right, and all of his relatives. But from lo yitama, it means that not to he can become tamei to the relative, but not to their limb that falls off of them. Rabbi Akiva, whereas Rabbi Akiva responds, Im kein lichtov rachman Allah v'lishtok. Still, Rabbi Akiva says, okay, I agree, but it could have just said la, right? It didn't need to say yitama. Could you say la? And then I mean to them, not to their limbs. Yitama lomali. Why does it say yitama? Shmamina. It means that to say that it's a chova. Rabbi Shmuel, whereas Rabbi Shmuel says no. I did the cause of law, cause of nami yitama. No, once it already said law, so we also said yitama, but don't read into it too much. The Tana of Rabbi Shmuel, the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel, but that whenever something was repeated, so it was repeated for the chiddush, which is in this case is law, but the yitama. Well, don't read into it to say that it's an obligation to become tamei. No, that is optional. And finally, lo'olam boim ta'avedu rishus to Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva mechove. So the pasuk says that by avodim knanim, so you can't free them; they have to remain your avodim forever. Rabbi Shmuel says that that's optional. Rabbi Akiva says this is obligatory. My time with Rabbi Shmuel. How come Rabbi Shmuel says it's optional? Aidi dichsiv loschai kol neshame, that because the pasuk says by the right there's the shiva umos and there's the shivim amim, or the shiva amim, the shivim umis, or are they both umis or both amim? Probably the same. Shiva umis and shivim umis. Okay, so we'll say umis. There's the shiva umis and there's the shivim umis. The shiva umis are Chiti, Gergashi, Amori, Kanani, Prisi, Chivi, Ivusi. Those are the shiva umis that were living in Eretz Yisrael. And the Torah has said, Los Chai Kol Neshame, that none of them could remain alive. But then there's the rest of the 63 of the shivim umis, or maybe it's 70 other umis, I don't know. But then there's the shivim umis that you can leave them alone. So because it says that by the shiva umis you can't leave anybody alive, so it's yichnam in the michtav the olam boim ta'avodu. So therefore oichet the pasuk had to say the olam boim ta'avodu that you can have them as avodim lemishrei echad mikol ha'umis sheba al haknainis v'oli b'mena bein. That what if you have somebody from the shivim umis, not the sheva umus, but the shivim umis, who has a baby with a woman from the sheva umis, that she'atarasha liknoso, that that child could be an Eved. So remember, so the Shiva Umis, you can't keep alive, and you can't have them as Avadim either, nothing. But if you have somebody from the Shivim Umis who has a baby with a woman from the Sheva Umis, that child can be an Eved. You can keep him alive as an Eved. Now, this next part of the Gemara is a little bit strange, because while we just said now that we need Le'olam Boim Ta'avodu to teach what we just said, that if a baby is born from a fellow from the Shivim Umis and a fellow from the Sheva Umis, that child can be kept alive. But now we're going to learn it out from a different pasuk. It's kind of weird, but it somewhat ties in together at the end. The Tanya is we learn it about umis shabar laknainis v'olim mimena ben. So how do we know if somebody from the Shivim Umis has a baby with a woman from the Sheva Umis, Shatarashi leknosu be'eved, that you can that the child can be an Eved and be spared. Talmud the pasuk says, "V'gam mibnat toshavim hagarim imachem meim tiknu," that from the toshavim, the residents among you, you can have avodim. So from there, that learns that if you have somebody from the Shivim Umis who comes to and as a child with somebody from the Shiva Umis and resides in Eretz Yisrael, that child can be an Eved and can be spared. Yochel af aknaini sheba al achos min ha'umis v'olid mimeno bein shatarash leknoso be'eved. So is it possible that also if you have somebody from the Shiva Umis, a fellow from the Shiva Umis who has a child with a fellow from the Shivim Umis, is it possible that that child can be an Eved? Tamloma asher holidu ba'artzechem. The pasuk says, no, only those that were born in your land, meaning if you have somebody from the Shivim Umis from outside Eretz Yisrael who has a baby with a woman from the Shiva Umis, so then if that baby is born now in Eretz Yisrael, that's okay. You can that child can be spared. But if it was a child who is lives in the land from a fellow from the Shiva Umis, even if it's with a fella from the Shivim Umis, that would not be okay. They cannot be spared. Now, Rabbi Akiva, okay, so fine. So Rabbi Yishmael, it's a little bit confusing because he initially said it's from L'olam B'em Tavodu, and now he's learning it out from another pasuk. But whatever it is, he's saying that generally speaking, you cannot l'schai kol neshama, you cannot leave you cannot spare anybody from the Shiva Umis. But in this case, where the father is from the Shivim Umis, even though the mother is from the Shiva Umis, the child can be spared. Now, Rabbi Akiva mimeim tiknu nafka. So Rabbi Akiva says, look, we just learned this out from meim tiknu, right? It says meim tiknu. That from there we just learned out, right? Remember, Rabbi Shmuel somehow was learning out from L'olam Boim Ta'avodu that these children can be spared. But Rabbi Akiva says, look, we just learned it out from Meim Tiknu that these children can be spared when the father is from the Shivim Umis. L'olam Boim Ta'avodu l'amali l'chovas. So says Rabbi Akiva, why do I also have the pasuk of L'olam Boim Ta'avodu? It must mean that it's obligatory, that you must always keep them as avodim. You can't free them. Rabbi Shmuel Boim v'lo ba'achechem. Whereas Rabbi Shmuel says that no, when it says bohem, bohem ta'avodu, it means that you can work them, avodim knainim, but not the case by avodim ivrim. In Eved Ivri, there are laws, that about just giving him busy work and stuff, and there are differences between how you treat an Eved Ivri and an Eved knainim. Rabbi Akiva be'achechem mi seifa de kronafka, whereas Rabbi Akiva says that halacha about how you have to treat an Eved Ivri versus an Eved Knaini is learned out from the the continuation of the pasuk uva'achechem b'nei Yisrael ish ba'achiv lo sedaba b'farich, that with your brethren b'nei Yisrael do not overwork. So we learn that from there. Rabbi Shmuel ayid dichsiv v'achechem ksiv nami boem, to which Rabbi Shmuel says, look, the duplication isn't such a big deal because the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel kol parsha shnema v'nishnes lo nishnes el b'shvil davar shnischadish ba. That whenever you have a parsha that was repeated. It might be repeated for some kind of necessary halacha, but then it might bring in the rest of it also, even though it's not necessarily needed. Okay, that was a little bit unclear, but that was the machlokas between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva regarding, must you keep your avadim, or can you keep your avadim? I.e., do you have the option to free them? Okay. Omer Rav Yitzchak says, Omer Rav Chizda says of Chizda's nusu bebeisa kikari lesumsima, that znus in a house is like a worm in sunflower seeds. I guess not good. It's going to rot the sunflower seeds and it'll rot your house. Omer Rav Chizda tukva bebeisa kikari lesumsima, says Rav Chizda, anger in the house is like worms in sunflower seeds. Idi ve'idi be'itza. Now, of course, both of these only apply to the wife, right? If the wife is being mizana or the wife is being angry, but the husband, it's not shaykh. Rav Chizda says of Chizda, Batchila kodem shechatu Yisrael ha'isa shechina shora im kol echad ve'echad, says of Chizda that initially, before the Yidden sinned and started getting involved in inappropriate relationships, so initially the Shechina, the divine presence, would dwell among all the Yidden. Shenemar, the Pasuk says, Ki Hashem Elokecha mishalech b'karev machanecha, that the Eibishter walks in your camp. But when the Yidden sinned, the divine presence removed itself from them, because the Eibishter doesn't want to see anything inappropriate, right? So initially, the divine presence was always among the Yidden, but then when the Yidden started being inappropriate, the Eibishter says, look, I don't really want to see what you guys are up to. So he kind of laid back. Omer Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Omer Reb Yonason, Kol ha'osim mitzvah achas b'olam hazeh, anybody who does a mitzvah in this world, mikadmoso v'olechas lefonav le'olam haba, that mitzvah walks before him, escorts him to the world to come. Shenemar, v'halach lefonecha tzidkecha, that your righteousness will walk before you, right? Even somebody does one mitzvah, that mitzvah walks before him to the olam haba. V'chol over avera achas b'olam hazeh, and anybody does even one sin in this world, it sort of envelops him and walks before him before the judgment day. That their ways will envelop them. They'll go into hecticness and be lost. Rabbi Eliezer Omer says, that the sin is tied to him like a dog. That Yosef did not listen to Eshes Potiphar to be with her, lishkav etzel b'olam hazeh, to lie with her in this world, lios ima l'olam haba, to be with her to the world to come, i.e., it would have stuck with him sort of forever. Friends, I think we're going to stop here, even though there's a whole bunch still to do on this daf, but I think it kind of really keeps going weiter into tomorrow's daf, so I think we'll stop here. Friends, this is like some real Gemara over here, man. I mean, these are some real dafs. These are big dafs. We haven't had big dafs like this in quite a while. But friends, nonetheless, I hope that you're enjoying Masechta Sotah so far. And today we discussed we had some interesting agaritas, it's kind of teachings. And then we discussed different machloks in between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, where Rabbi Shmuel says it's a reshus and Rabbi Akiva says that it's a chova. Friends, that was Daf Gimel of Masechta Sotah. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.